Welcome everyone to the Healing Sexual Trauma Summit. I am Marcy Little, your host, and with us today is Nunaisi Ma. Nunaisi Ma, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Before I tell you more about Nunaisi Ma and the wonderful work that she offers and does in the world, let's just do what we do. We'll take this moment to allow ourselves to get present in the body. And if hearing me say that immediately makes you want to run from the room, then just take care of yourself and do what works for you. Okay, so, but if it doesn't make you want to run from the room, then go ahead and feel free to keep your eyes open or let your eyelids lower. Just notice for a moment what's going on with your breath. Remembering that you live in a physical body and that you're in one right now. If it helps to bring awareness into the soles of your feet, to feel them in contact with the earth, then please do that now. If not, no worries. For me, I love to make a sound when I exhale sometimes, especially if I've been dealing with grief or any kind of sadness. And since we're all still living in this time of a pandemic, there's a lot of grief and sadness in all of us. So just welcoming that. And the invitation as we listen to what Nunaisi Ma has to share with us is always to be listening to the language of your body and respecting what it's telling you. And if it's saying, I need a break right now, I've got to get up and walk around and feeling tension, whatever may occur, or even this feels really good to me to hear this right now. Take care of yourself. So I welcome you to, if your eyelids are lowered, lift them now. And here we are, Nunaisi Ma and me. We are here to greet you. All right. So how are you doing over there, Nunaisi Ma?
Yeah, I am doing good. I have just went through the rabbit hole of COVID, and it's a process, it's a journey, and the life throws challenges at us all the time. So it's really embracing that, and I'm happy to be on the other side of it.
We're so happy too. Yeah, before we started, Nunaisi and I talked a little bit about this, and so thanks for sharing that now with our interviewers. And thanks for being here after going through something that was really challenging like that for your health and on many levels. So I'm going to just tell you a little more about Nunaisi Ma. Nunaisi Ma is the author of the book Rise, life mentor, natural health practitioner, yoga teacher, clarity breathwork facilitator, Reiki Master, spiritual intuitive, and certified in dozens of healing modalities. For over 2 decades, she has been facilitating healing groups, women's circles, retreats, and one-on-one sessions. She is the founder of the Rise movement and a conscious mama of 3 amazing children. Nunaisi, it is wonderful to have you with us here today.
It is wonderful to be here. I love the work that you're doing. It's so needed and so vital. So thank you for showing up and stepping up and doing what you do.
Thank you. Awesome. Nunaisi, just for full transparency, recently held a summit. You have a new book out, as I just mentioned here, called Rise. And I have a new book out, and Nunaisi asked me to be a speaker in her summit. So we've got a little summit exchange going on here. So is there anything more you'd like our viewers to know about you before we move on?
Right. So I think it's always nice to start with a little background of how I got to do what I'm doing. Yeah. And I think that creates a little bit more light into why I'm so passionate about healing in general and specifically sexual healing. So I was sexually abused by my stepfather at a very young age, from the age of about 7 to around 10 years old. And it really messed me up in so many ways. And when that sexual intervention started, I was very naive and I was very open in my body. He was very gentle with me. He was very loving, even in a certain way. And his touch was very gentle and actually created pleasure in my body. So I just received it, and I just really, in a way, even cooperated. And as I grew older and as I became more conscious about just something feeling off, I couldn't put the hand on it. I couldn't really pinpoint what was off, but something internal just did not feel right. And I remember the first time that I came across the word pedophile in a newspaper. And then I just had that, like the aha moment that this is actually really, really wrong. And from that moment, when I had that realization, I started, just shaming myself and contemplating a lot of guilt and shame and disgust. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to break that cycle. And there is a lot of background story to it as well, with my mother that was very in love with this man, and she was so in love with him that she was even tried to commit suicide and take her own life to be able to be with him, which I, at the age of 6, saved her physically. So there was a lot of background story to follow this sexual playground that he created with me. And when I was 10 years old, I just could not live with myself anymore. The emotional baggage was so heavy that I felt that if I'm not going to do something about it and change the circumstances, I will just collapse under the weight of it. And so it took my entire courage to share it with my grandmother. And from there, there was a whole set of events, but I was further shamed and, by the police that came later to the house. There were 3 policemen that investigated me in front of my father, my grandmother, my grandfather for hours, asking me very, very embarrassing questions and really putting me on the spotlight as if I'm the perpetrator, right?
Right.
And so that was the night when I actually told out to my grandmother that I moved away from my mother, never to be back, moved to live with my father and his to-be wife, which did not wanted me from day one. So there's a lot of childhood trauma that I've been through. And the sexual trauma was a thread right throughout my life. I was still encountering more sexual predators. My sexual energy was activated way too early, and I think they leashed onto it. And so I got to a place when I was in my early 20s where I was a real mess.
Yeah.
I was doing drugs. I was really drowning in my own pain. And at one moment, it was the dark night of my soul that I found myself taking a little bit too much drugs, lying on the floor in my bathroom and just having a belly cry, knowing that I cannot go like this. I can't go on. I'm not going to arrive into any good places with all this pain. And I made a very conscious decision to go through the healing, to go through the process of meeting the pain, processing all those emotions, working with my thoughts, working with my mind and my body so I can feel good in my own skin again. And that took me on a whole journey of searching, looking for teachers, looking for therapists, reading every possible book on the subject, and really turning around every possible stone.
Mhm.
And of course, I worked on myself first. That was my main calling. And as I evolved in my journey, and as I felt more and more whole, which was a process over time, I had that burning desire to share it with as many people as possible, and really help other people to navigate from sexual trauma into sexual wholeness.
I am so touched and moved by your story, and thank you for sharing it. And I'm sure that for many viewers that feels familiar, unfortunately, to what they have also experienced and lived through. And as a viewer, you may need to take a moment right now to just put your hands on your heart and take another breath, particularly if this touches you personally, and if it was, hard to hear Nunaisi Ma's story, which was filled with trauma and resilience and incredible strength and ultimately healing, and then becoming the healer then that gives back. Yeah, and that really is a journey, and we're going to actually talk more about that, I think, as we get into what we're going to talk about today. So I ask all of my interviewees, speakers, why they wanted to be part of the Healing Sexual Trauma Summit, and I have a feeling you kind of already answered that. Is there anything more you want to add to that question?
It's really important for me to, if I think of the essence of my message, is that sexual trauma is very painful, and yet it's not a death sentence. It's not an imprisonment for life, and it can be healed and it can be worked through, and one can come out of it more empowered, more wise, and still enjoy the pleasure that we all hardwired for.
Yeah, great. Okay. So Nunaisi Ma and I agreed to talk about how to overcome sexual trauma and drop the sexual shame, which she has already sort of alluded to. So you were going to speak about the 4 stages of healing. Would you like to get into that a little bit?
Right. Yeah, so there are 4 stages to the healing process, and it's not linear. So it's not that you kind of go from one, finish the one, go to the other. They're a little bit intertwined, in each other, and sometimes the movement through the one to the other is a bit back and forth. But these are the stages. So when a trauma happens, and this is, it's the same for any kind of trauma, as well as sexual trauma. The first stage is the stage of victimhood. So we feel violated, we feel powerless, we feel, rightfully so, as if damage was done to us, outside of our control, outside of our contest, outside of our comfort zone, or outside of our wish. And so that is the first stage, and it's okay to be in that stage, because this is the first stage, is we feel violated. And that is important to acknowledge, and it's important to sit with it for a while and feel it. There's no need to rush quickly out of it. But the next stage that follows that, once there is some kind of willingness to move forward, once there is some energy to go forward, then the next stage will be the stage of empowerment. So in that stage, we kind of starting to take the control back into our hands. And we start maybe seeing that it is not our fault, that yes, we have been violated, and yes, we have been victimized, but we are ultimately not victims of our story. We can rewrite it, we can work through it, we can move through it. And when we realize that, then we really starting to shift into that space of, I am still going to make my life work the best I can, and it's in my power to do so, and nobody can take it away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving from that stage comes the stage of surrendering. And this is when there is kind of understanding that is also the higher spirit, call it God, the divine, however you're comfortable calling it, but that energy is there. And so nothing is in vacuum and nothing is out of context, and even things that seems to be very challenging, adversities, perhaps they still have something to teach us. Perhaps they still have some value when we go through that healing and growth process. And then that leads to the final stage of healing, which is awakening. And that is integrating that empowerment and surrender together, knowing that, yes, we have been victimized, but we also are the heroes of our life. And we also whole and perfect inside within our soul. Nothing ever can change that. And we can have the right tools, guidance, help, mentoring, therapy to move along the healing journey and come out of the other side empowered in our sovereign capacity and in our wholeness. So it's kind of coming back home.
Yeah, I'm so glad too that you brought in the part about the supports, because as you were sharing these stages, and it's like, this is a lot to do, and we really can't do this without having proper supports in our lives to make, to make it through these parts of the journey, these stages of the journey towards awakening and a returning to, like you said, that state of wholeness that can't be touched by any of life's experiences. It's just a given.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a
Right. Yeah.
hard thing for a lot of people to even be able to relate to when, when those connections internally haven't been made yet.
Yeah, exactly. It is in relationship that we get hurt, and it is in relationship that we heal too.
Mm-hmm.
And just by being witnessed by another person, or held, or feeling that safe container to be able to express, to be able to share, to be able to tell the story, is already very healing. And I really think that, when we want to dismantle shame, right? Shame is the fear of disconnection. Shame is the fear that if I will be vulnerable and if I will tell my deepest pain or my darkest wounds or my imperfect parts of myself or my shadows, then I will not be loved and I will not be accepted. And it's actually really the opposite. And I'm sure that for the listeners, when I am telling my story and I'm really sharing even the less favorable, parts to share, when I say that I've actually enjoyed the touch, and I specifically bring that forward because so many women that I've been working with and, that I came across my journey of healing also on some level enjoyed the the sexual interaction for many various reasons. And the biggest is because our bodies are wired for pleasure.
Yeah.
And especially as children, we are so open, we are so, there's no filters, there's no yet walls of protection. It's just really open. And so a touch that feels good, period. We don't have the mind and the story and the interpretation that we give it as yet. And even if we do, even if we start beating ourselves for even enjoying the process, then I want to first of all reassure you that in a situation where it's a child and there's not even any other justification to it, it's just wrong, and it's absolutely the adult's responsibility. There's not even a question.
Yeah.
But even as an adult, a woman that is wearing maybe a little bit exposing outfit and she gets raped and then she thinks, oh, maybe I called it in. It's absolutely not true. Any violation to your sexual being without your full consent is wrong. No matter what you were wearing, no matter how you've been behaving, no matter what you said or didn't say, it's wrong. You have the full power or choice to decide where is your boundaries and what you allow in or not. And so, many women or men, I'm talking about women, but it's exactly the same about men, and men being also sexually violated in our society, quite a lot actually. It's that sense of, where is my part in it? Or where is me to blame? And so I just want to take a moment and invite our listeners, if you have any kind of feelings like that, to really just drop them and rest them somewhere else, because it's just, I feel that we all been exposed to a very sick society for so many generations, that even if we haven't been physically violated in this lifetime, we still have been raised in so many wrong messages, in so many lack of education, in so much lack of education, and so many just damaging information around sexuality that's been passing in generations. So I feel that we all have been sexually violated on some level, even if not physically. And so this is kind of my starting point. And it's really when we allow ourselves to share our stories, the shame just dismantles naturally.
Yeah, it's like what we keep a secret keeps us held prisoner. And I really like what you were saying. I'll just sort of reflect back, it's like, and I write about this too. It's really what my book is about. And you're talking about legacy trauma, you're talking about collective trauma, you're talking about cultural trauma that we all share, because we're part of this world where it's the norm. And what you're talking about in terms of ownership of your own body, particularly as women, is something we have to cultivate. Actually, we have to realize it, because it's not a given. We don't naturally necessarily realize that. We need to be taught it. And then we have to internalize it. And then we have to practice it. Yeah. Your story of coming upon the word pedophile reminds me of my story of, wasn't even until I was in my 30s and I heard the word statutory rape. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I have early childhood sexual trauma, but I was raped when I was 15 and a half by a 22-year-old man at a party. I read about it, and when I was drunk, and it was so confusing because I thought I wanted to be with this person, and yet I was drunk and throwing up, and it was like, no. And then all of a sudden it was like, it doesn't matter whether you thought you wanted it or not. There was no way in those circumstances you could fully give your consent, period. You were too young and you were drunk. And it was this adult male's responsibility really to protect you. And that's how it truly should be. And so often is not. So I appreciate what you're saying. And so how do we shift out of the shame that seems to be inherent when our body boundary has been breached?
Yeah, so I think it's important to acknowledge that we all in this together. Shame is very, very prevalent. It's something so fundamental in our society, and really the way to work through shame is to create more connection, to create more conversation that is vulnerable, that is real, that is raw, with the right people for sure. With either an intimate loving partner or a good friend or a sister, a parent. A therapist is also very recommended to go through that with somebody trained.
Yeah.
And once we are able to really be raw with what we've been through, how we felt, then shame starts to really dilute and dissipate and dismantle, because we allow things to come to the surface so it can be healed. And I really want to touch specifically on working through that with a partner, because I trust that our intimate partner is the fastest vehicle for healing possible. And it's really important to choose the right one wisely. And when I say that, I mean somebody that will be able to hold your hand through that journey of healing, which is bumpy, can be ups and downs, and processing things and triggering things. And it's really, really important to be able to communicate with your partner about what you've been experiencing. And I know that for many people, it might be really scary what I'm just saying, because it's such a pain that they want to bury and they don't want to bring it up, and they are afraid not to be loved by their partner if they are telling the story. And I want to reassure you that it's actually the opposite. In other words, when you are able to tell your story, and I'm not saying about, I'm not talking about telling your story in a first date kind of scenario, right? You just, going on a first date and then you just, vomiting your entire life, story, which in some cases can work as well, but it's not what I personally recommend. I personally recommend to first create some sense of trust, of safety, of intimate relating that is sound enough to hold such a strong wave or current, right? That kind of move the relationship in a certain direction. And I really feel that with the right partner that can listen to the story and say, I will be there to support you. What's happened to you is not your fault. And I am here to be part of your healing. And this is really what you want to create in your intimate relationships. And if the partner can't hold you in that space, then it's not the right partner for you. Because, right, you can't walk through intimate relationships without the partner knowing about your story so they can support you when needed. It's not even if, it's when needed. And they can not take things personally if you all of a sudden get triggered, or you all of a sudden get into a memory or an unresolved emotion, or a pattern of thoughts. They really need to understand, and sometimes they even need to be supported also by a, you know, a therapist or a healer, or you know, somebody that can give them maybe some tools to support you in the process, but they have to be willing to go through that journey with you. And if they are willing to support you, then you stumbled upon gold, and you stumbled upon somebody that will be gentle enough and wise to guide you through that healing journey. And that is really the fastest way to heal from sexual trauma, is through healthy sexual relationships.
I'm loving that you brought us to this particular possibility, I will call it. And, you know, it brings me, it just what rushes up for me is how true that has been for me in my marriage. And it is the story, the whole story that I write about, and we're still together. And it's like, can I be in the moment, present in my body in an authentic way with this other, with whatever is present in me? And do they have the capacity to meet me there? And so, and yeah, I agree with you. It's the fastest path to a really true and cellular level healing, for sure.
Exactly. And, you know, part of that healing in intimacy, and again, that's also my experience, because I met my husband when I was 22 years old. We've been together for 24 years now. You can do the math. And he was such a stable rock in my journey. I could share with him my disturbing fantasies. I could share with him tears. You know, there were some times that we were making love and I was completely frozen, and I was completely not in my heart and not in my yoni and not in my body. And there were times that I needed to laugh or I needed to shake. You know, there was some visceral experience healing that was happening, and I literally went into convulsions.
Yes.
And he was there to hold me through. And also very important is to be able to work through my boundaries with my partner and say, this does not feel good for me right now, or at all, or you know, this is a no for me. And in this way, it's almost, you know, regaining that power that was violated before, and slowly you know, navigating through what feels good, and allowing only what feels right and good in my body to be allowed.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, it's so powerful. And I would say that in my my intimate relationship with my husband, my partner, my life partner, it's one of the hardest things actually is that I actually always have to be my own guide, and I really can't rely on him to be the one who's knowing more than I do what I need, where I'm at, or what my boundaries are. And so it's like, but his willingness, you know, is really the key. His willingness, you know, to be there and to have been there and to continue to be there, because it's constantly always evolving and changing if we're going to be really, truly in that awakened and alive state, you know?
right, yeah, exactly. It's a journey that you're embarking together, and it's actually on many levels deepening the intimacy. Yes. Right? Because you able to take off the masks and take off the maybe the you know, coping mechanisms, or you know, the survival mechanisms that you adopted. And we all adopt all different kinds of survival mechanisms to be able to deal with such intense emotional experience. that, you know, we might put armors around our heart, or disconnect from our body, or you know, like me, I used very destructive fantasies to get aroused. I could not get aroused naturally, and it was such a source of pain and frustration for me, because here I was physically with, you know, a young man, beautiful young man that I was so in love with, and I cannot activate my body for arousal. Instead, I have to entertain in my mind, you know, memories of somebody that actually hurt me, you know, on so many deep levels. And I felt that, you know, there's that disconnection and misalignment, and it was really, really tough to work through those fantasies. And yet I could share it with my man, and he would tell me, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're going to work through it together. You've been through so much.
Yeah.
I am here to support you. Don't beat yourself up for these fantasies.
Yeah.
We're going to work through it together.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I interviewed someone in the series named Leah Carey, and she said something that was the first time I really heard it that way. And so if you're listening and you've already heard that interview, this will sound familiar to you. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. She said that those fantasies, when we have them later in life, the difference is that we own them now. They're ours. And we get to choose. We can stop them at any time. And that, and so I'm really glad that your husband said, it's okay, because it's just so natural. It's just such a natural part of the process. And we may want to feel like that's something that we need to work through, or it may be something that we just own as this is part of what works for me, you know? So it's like, it's maybe going to be in that spectrum, you know, for people.
Right. Look, I know that for me, those specific fantasies were really damaging, because I would be able to get aroused. I will be able to even orgasm, but after that, I will feel so disgust with myself. And I felt like I was just, you know, perpetuating this cycle of abuse. I'm just carrying on that cycle. And, you know, I experienced my first orgasm when I was 10 years old. And I did not know what it was. I did not anticipate that. I did not even, you know, was aware that it's possible. It was just my body reaction with some clitoral stimulation. And when that happened, it took me by, like a storm came and just swept me off my feet. And I was like, whoa, what was that? What was happening? And it took me years later, I think only in my 20s, that I actually clicked that, oh, hold on a second. What I've experienced back then, that was an orgasm. It took me a while to put it together. Yeah. But at that time, what happened is that my entire orgasmic flow got wired with that moment, with that, you know, it's one of those moments that I can remember clearly the details of what was happening, how, you know, I was lying and there was this blanket and he was sitting under, and, you know, my baby sister was playing on the carpet, and, you know, like I can see the entire picture. It was so profound that it left me with all the details very vividly.
Imprint, yeah.
Right. And that's what happens in a moment of trauma. We kind of imprinting what was there. And so it wired my sexual energy, and especially my orgasmic energy, with so much guilt and shame and disgust. And I could only really orgasm for years. And I'm talking about at least 1 to 2 decades after, by activating those fantasies. But it was every time I've, you know, experienced an orgasm, it was like, you know, oh, that nice body release, wired with, again, all that shame and disgust and guilt. So it was like they were together, and I really needed to separate them because it was just too painful. It was too painful.
I hear you. I hear you.
And so my process for that was first to slowly change the fantasies, the content of the fantasies that will be a little bit less devastating. So instead of fantasizing about my stepfather, which was my original fantasy, I slowly moved to this one perpetrator that was waiting for me outside my school when I was a teenager. And, I was waiting there in the car a couple of times. And when I came out, he was offering me all sorts of, yeah, I'll come with me, I'll buy you whatever you want. And, and in reality, I was like, no ways. It was definitely a no. But I then invited him into my fantasy because it was feeding that same energy of disgust, of I've been violated, and I've been and then the fantasy went into a little different fantasy that was even easier to digest. And it took me a while, only after I started to learn more about Tantra and sacred sexuality, that I've realized that I don't even need a fantasy. I can just be in my body and breathe and move and sound, which is a whole other experience. And also I could even use that energy to manifest things that I want in my life. And so that was kind of the progression, but it was over time.
Yeah, over time. Thank you for sharing that journey also of how you basically, I like the use of the word digest. It's like we have to metabolize. And in the metabolization, there's that element of fire, and then it gets burned up and transformed, alchemically transformed. And it's like you did it in stages and steps, and gradually it shifted into something beautiful for you, which is now what you have. So we're coming to the end of our time together. And I have one more question for Nunaisi Ma. And before I ask her that question, two things. You have a gift for us. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. So I have done a summit about sexual healing. And I got a few experts in the field that gave amazing insights, tools, transmissions. And so I put it all into a book with the nuggets of wisdom from each expert. And it's called Sexual Healing Playbook. And so I want to give that. And in that book, there's also a link to register to the summit and listen to all those talks. And if you really feeling like immersing yourself in the depth of healing, then just know that, with this summit that you're doing, Marcy, and, the knowledge, the wisdom, the guidance is there for you.
Great. Love that. That's a great gift. Thank you for sharing that with us. And there are so many other gifts, and viewers, if you're here for free for 48 hours, so glad to have you. And there's much here. There's much to digest. In this interview alone, there's much to digest that will potentially take time. If you want to be able to take this at your own pace, come back and listen again, I really suggest that you purchase the summit now while it's at a very low cost. Nunaisi Ma, my final question to you, is there any final wisdom that you feel is really just vital for us to take away from our shared time together?
Yeah, what comes up for me to share now is that I want the listeners to know that by going through that healing journey, you actually almost unlocking or collecting the keys to unlock the doors of your greatness. I really believe after so many years of walking this path of healing that nothing happens randomly, nothing happens by accident or coincidence. And yes, we have a lot to transform as a society, but it always starts with the work you do on yourself. And by healing your wounds, by restoring your sexuality, you will be able to fly to the heights of your soul. And you will be able to really unleash your own greatness. So I invite you to embrace yourself in that journey, and you know, even if resistance comes or fear arises, look at it, acknowledge it, and carry on, because on the other side of healing, life is waiting for you.
Yes, and it's life all the way through, and it's a better life, you know, when you, and I'm going to point to your book now, when you rise.
When you rise, yeah. Yeah.
And there it
Yeah.
is. Wonderful. Nunaisi Ma, what an honor and what a pleasure, and all of that to spend this time talking with you, to hear you, to hear your journey, to hear your knowledge and your wisdom, and to be privy to that, and to know you're there as a resource for anyone who wants to reach your way. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the wonderful work you're doing. You know, I absolutely salute you for that. And yeah, thank you. It's so needed. And yeah, we really, as a collective, all in this together. And so I really see you and I appreciate your work.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you too.